Thank Mother Nature, who may or may not exist, that spring is now upon us. Spring is seen as a time of rebirth in nature, with the transitioning from winter to life waking up the natural world. But spring can also be viewed in a spiritual way, as a sense of newness in the air to some can mean the feeling of powerful energy. That may or may not convince folks that an abundance of new energy opens the pathway to the supernatural. And with it could come supernatural experiences that may or may not have an adequate explanation. I tell you what, we're about to host a call-in show where there's truth wanted. So if you have a supernatural claim that you want to discuss with us, maybe you want to convince us that supernatural things are real, be it ghosts or gods or something else, then give us a call because the show is starting now. Good day and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, John the Skeptic. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. So if you'd like to give us a call, you can at 1-512-991-9242 or through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And each week on Truth Wanted, the host is joined by someone even more fabulous. And this week we have Drew Bekius. How's it going, Drew?
Hey, not bad, my man. I got to tell you, I'm really disappointed that over the last few weeks, we've just magically figured out what all of truth is across this country and around the world. And
we don't need more truth, right? We know it all.
We've got it all. We've got it all. So I'm a little disappointed. There's not going to be any calls, no curiosities.
There's got to be some truth out there that we don't know about yet. There's just got to be. Let's hope that we find it today.
Let's find it. I've got my shovel. Let's go.
There you go. Before we get started, though, we do want to give you the results from last week's We Want the Truth, or the WWTT segment. Last week, we asked you, make up your own religious counterpart for a science claim, and here are some of our favorite answers. Number 3, know what? Religious counterpart for scientific claim. There's no such thing as gravity, only intelligent falling. Great. I like a little bit of a pun. Number 2, Chuck Gaydos. Religious counterpart for a scientific claim. Dark matter is really the corpses of the angels who died in the war in heaven. They can't be seen, but it's well known that a spirit weighs 21 grams.
Amen.
There you go. There you go. And at number 1, Miranda Rensberger, religious counterpart for a scientific claim. Rather than vaccines showing your immune system a part of the pathogen so that it can build up antibodies, the vaccine is actually an internal anointing with holy oil, which allows you to fight off the demons that cause disease. That does sound more plausible than anything else I've ever heard. Are you anointing me with water right now? You should never throw water at electronic components. That's what I've always learned, right?
I was actually just miming it.
Oh, I believed you. That's some great acting, Drew.
Ooh, well, what was the truth? I don't know.
Who knows? So this week for the We Want the Truth. We Want the Truth. I did say it right. The prompt is, what says, and now listen, I'm going to say this wrong because I'm British. I'm sorry, but I'll say it again the right way for everyone else. What says I'm an asshole without saying I'm an asshole? Or what says I'm an asshole without saying I'm an asshole? Right? Is that any good?
Very well done. Very well done.
Okay, thanks. Yes. So Drew, we gave you that prompt. Have you got something?
Well, just yesterday I was telling someone that my partner is actually from Canada, is a Canadian citizen who's here. And they immediately, their impulse was to look absolutely horrified, something like, and then they immediately said, are they an illegal? I don't know, fucker. Tell me.
Wow.
Tell me you're an asshole without telling me an asshole.
Wow. That's okay. Well, I'm sorry, but I also feel that as a person not from this country, living in this country, that happens to me more often than you care to imagine. Mine would be a lot less as harsh. People correcting grammar.
Ah, yes.
And I promise I
Yeah.
will try and stop doing that. But, I'm an asshole, or an asshole, I guess. We can't wait to see what the audience comes up with. Comment on this video, and your comment may well be read out in next week's episode. So Drew is here with us this week. Drew, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's your inside leg? All of the good stuff. We don't have to say the inside leg, but
Like, did you just ask me my
I did just ask that, and I apologize. What are you known for, Drew?
Since I've measured, but we can work on it. So
who knows?
Yeah. No, so I am Drew, as you said. That is me. And I'm a former minister. Started my first evangelical Christian nonprofit ministry thing at the age of 16, started preaching at 17, went off to seminary, picked up a couple theology degrees, pastored a couple churches, yada, 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 yada. About 12 years ago, my deconversion culminated, and I finally realized that, yes, I had indeed become an atheist. I had already left the church, or at least the ministry at that point, in a last-ditch effort to try and rekindle my faith. Maybe it would be easier to rekindle my faith if I didn't have the need to care for everybody else's souls. Maybe I could just focus on my own and God would start talking to me again. But no, a couple months later, realized I had in fact become an atheist, left it all. A couple years later, discovered the Clergy Project, had the incredible privilege to work with the Clergy Project for a number of years, first as communications director and then as president. It was an incredible experience with an absolutely fantastic organization providing peer support for no longer believing religious leaders around the world. I've been involved in humanism since then in a variety of different ways, and love spending time working with our local humanist community here in the Twin Cities, which just so happens to be the first community to ever use the term humanist. You know, that old antiquated philosophical Renaissance term, humanism from the 1300s. Well, our community was the first one to say, we like that terminology. Let's apply it to a non-theistic lens. Anyway, so great group of folks based here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Otherwise, I'm just trying to learn to be a better human, live a healthier humanity, build a better world. That's about it.
It's very difficult as one person, I've found. But what I've learned from you, Drew, because we have met in person, Drew has this uncanny ability to command a room without even trying. You just have this voice and presence that people just want to listen to you and gravitate towards, and you are a wonderful man to be around.
Until John enters the room, and they're like, whoa, somebody worth paying attention to.
That's just because of a British accent. I have nothing of note to say. Whereas you, I think you could talk about guinea pigs, and people go, do you know what? Yeah. Drew's got a point. Guinea pigs are cool.
They are pretty fucking fantastic.
Yeah, have you
ever held a guinea pig?
I used to have guinea pigs. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Their whole life is just in your hands. Just bum, bum. It's incredible.
And I lived in a country where, there's no real natural predators other than humans. So guinea pigs, people have guinea pigs as pets and, rabbits as pets. There's the occasional fox that might try to get in, but that is very rare. Yeah, no, I used to keep guinea pigs. There you go. That's a little fact about me.
Fun fact of the day. Yeah. I love it. I
feel like we're all learning something here. We haven't learned your inside leg yet, but we'll get there by the end of the show.
Careful. It's a dangerous journey to find it out. So
right. I've been on shows where we've been talking about circumcision and who's got foreskin and all this stuff. Who knows where this show could go?
I don't even know.
I'll show you later. I will. I've got a video phone, so I'll call you. Who knows where this is going? Bye, if you also have a foreskin, feel free to call in and tell us.
Yes.
We want to know. Before we get to some calls, we have got some calls lining up, and there are spaces if you do want to give us a call as well. We want to hear about some truth bombs that you might have, or if you believe in stuff that we may not believe in, try and convince us that it's true, or it's just hearing about some experiences that maybe you've had. Give us a call. There's plenty of space open. We've got a long show, and we want to hear from you. But Before we get to some calls, we do need to shout out our patron of the week. Every single week, we get to shout out our patron that donates through tiny.cc/patrontw for supporting the show. This week's patron of the week is Victoria van der Veer. Thank you, Victoria van der Veer, and thank you to everyone else that contributes to the show. Okay, have we got someone? Yeah, we've got someone ready to go. Are you ready, Drew? Let's
do it.
Let's kick this thing off, shall we? So in the queue right now, we've got Connor. Pronouns are he, him, from Utah. Animal rights are an extension of human rights and would like our opinions on that. Hey, Connor, you're on with John and Drew. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, I was just, just wondering, like, you guys' opinions about the idea of, like, animal rights and how, like, for me, like, I feel that there's either a misconception or, like, more of an invitation for people to, like, consider animal rights. Like, there is, of course, human rights, but, like, knowing, like, how there should be, like, a continued effort for animal rights too.
Right. I'm going through some stuff right now when it comes to animal rights and eating animals. An internal conflict where I'm slowly starting to move away from wanting to eat animals and trying to find another way to get all the nutrients that I need. So I'm with you, but tell you what, I am struggling with getting there. Since moving to the USA, developed a very annoying allergy. I'm allergic to soy, and soy, when you're on a plant-based diet, is quite abundant, I found. So I'm struggling with that. But I am kind of with you, Connor, and I think there is still a lot of humans almost seem like we're the dominant species and we get to eat all these things. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I mean, there are certain species of animals that I sort of lean more towards having a bit of like a protection need for, if that makes sense. I don't know about you, Drew.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. And Connor, I really appreciate the call because I think it's an important conversation that is not always often had. And, I hear about this a lot. So I kind of tend to spend a lot of time within humanist circles. And there was one variety of humanism that oftentimes is kind of maybe misconstrued as a core humanist tenet. And that's this idea that like humans are above and beyond all other species and that like puts humans as supreme. Most humanists today do not believe anything of the sorts. And it's more just living a healthier humanity, building a better world. And as the species that fucked up so much of the world, taking responsibility for that in building that better world and focusing on the human in humanism, because, well, that's us, right? Like, how can we live life without living it through our lens, which makes it inherently focused on being human. So that's why I still like the terminology humanist and the movement humanism. That said, I don't want it to sound like I'm digressing, because one of the criticisms of humanism is a whole other movement called sentientism. Maybe by chance you're familiar with this, heard of this. And the idea there is kind of almost doing everything humanists do, but just shifting it a little wider and saying, listen, we don't just care about humans and humanity's ability to thrive, but we care about all sentient beings. And I think there's a lot of benefit in expanding that conversation. It doesn't flow off the tongue. I think the branding suffers a little bit with sentientism versus humanism. It's just like, what, huh? For a lot of people, which for anyone not aware, I mean, sentientism or sentient beings are those beings who are able to feel pain, may or may not have some level of consciousness, but feel pain, right? And so, but then we can ask, Connor, maybe the concern is even beyond just sentient beings to all humanity, right? And so, or I'm sorry, not all humanity, all beings, right? I think these are good questions. I'll be honest, I don't have any easy answers. I have dabbled in veganism For a long while, I was pushing kind of hard to try and incrementally become more and more vegan. I think where I'm at right now, and I by no means claim that this is the best way to do it, but it's kind of where I'm landing, is trying to practice more where I'm trying to exercise mindfulness and graciousness towards the sacrifice that other members, and when I say members, I'm just talking about other beings, other animals and beings around, a part of the earth, acknowledging their sacrifice within that cycle that I will eventually die and feed into myself. And so that's more where I'm at. Again, I don't claim that that's the best way, and I certainly might not land there long term, but it's where I'm at now, if that's helpful.
And Connor, where are you? I mean, I feel like you probably wouldn't have called if you weren't at least vegetarian or, exploring veganism, but how do you feel about it?
Well, this is my first time calling, so I'm a little shaky. So if I talk kind of...
We're very gentle. We're very gentle here.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I've experienced a huge transition for me because, I go to a class. It's about animal philosophy, and it's really tackling with notions of how do we come about in our human mindset of interactions with other sentient beings. For me, I've drastically changed my diet in a lot of ways. I've not eaten eggs currently or milk. I've been drinking soy milk instead. And I think even if, you guys have said that you've tackled how to be vegan or vegetarian, I think it's a continual process, not just I made it, but it's more always evolving into a better you, and striving for that.
Yeah, I think that's important as well. And I'm one of those that if something is naturally produced by an animal, I don't see as much of a problem with eating what's being produced, as long as it's, again, done in a humane, cared for way. Absolutely fine. But if battery hens, for example, they're not treated very well, I do not want to encourage that, so I won't purchase eggs from battery farms. Or I actually stopped eating beef 7 or 8 years ago because I didn't agree with beef farming. So I was like, okay, what can I do to slowly transition out of this? And that was one of the things I worked on. I kind of feel like, as long as animals are being cared for in the correct way, what they produce, we could probably... I'm okay personally with ingesting, but if animals are treated terribly, I don't want to encourage that in any way. I do not want to keep pushing that and give people a reason to treat animals that way. And we know fully well that when animals get hurt, they let out, they feel pain. They let out. If I've accidentally stood on my dog several times, because she's always just there, and she yelps when I accidentally tread on her tail or something, we know that they feel pain. So I feel like I'm desperately trying to do it, Connor. Honestly, I'm trying to step away from eating the meats. It's going to be a slow process for me because of my allergies, but I feel like you're doing the right thing by saying, animals have feelings, and maybe we should think about how we ingest them, or if we ingest them at all, or what we take from them. So I think you've got a good message there, Connor. I'm all for it.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And anything you're curious about that you want to discuss a little further along this line?
Maybe I have a hard time with, I think that it goes along with animal rights too, the idea of animal experimentation, for scientific purposes, and I struggle with that because
Are you still there, Connor? Did we lose you?
Oh,
Oh no, I hope we didn't. I was going somewhere and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we. Oh, there we are. Hello.
He's back.
again. He's back again. Don't leave us, Connor.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. My reception may be a little bit off, but yeah. Did you hear what I guys said?
Say it again, just so we can make sure.
Okay. Just to repeat. Right now I'm having very struggling with the idea of animal experimentation, like specifically like in scientific terms, because sure there is like some implications to like helping humans to like maybe for certain diseases or some cures, but recently, like I found out that like there's been alternative ways of not using animal experimentation, like for instance, like I think it was like called like something like a human lung, like like some type of replica of the human lung, so that we can like test things out. So yeah, I wonder what you guys think about that.
Where do we draw the line on what we test on animals? Because I mean, for the betterment of the human species, looking at ways to treat diseases and treat ailments that we struggle with as a species, maybe. But testing for how a hairspray holds your hair and what lipstick looks like, I'm definitely very against that. It is a very fine line, because how else would we? I mean, other than testing on ourselves, obviously, how else would we find ways of treating all of these issues that the human race suffers with? I do think, if people are happy to be tested on, go for it. That'd be great. But there aren't many people that would do that. And so what is the next best option? And unfortunately, it does seem like that using creatures that have similar DNA sequences to what they're treating for is the only way to do it. But I mean, what do you reckon, Drew? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is another one of these things where, at least I would suggest, there's no clear and obvious answer in some of this. But I mean, it to some degree, it almost comes down to what's the scenario called with the train tracks, right? Where you flip back and forth, and right. So on the one hand, I'm tempted to say that, okay, if like in terms of cancer research, okay, and I profess my ignorance. I don't know exactly all the different ways that animals are used in testing, but I'm assuming it's pretty pervasive, okay, in like everything is my assumption. And so if it's something that is more serious, like you said, John, not hairspray, testing the hold of hairspray, but something like cancer research, right? If there's applications there, my mind jumps to, okay, if the choice is never testing any cancer research on an animal or something similar to cancer research on an animal and continuing to let humanity die of cancer, or if it's, I'm tempted to use the word sacrificing. I don't know if that's the best way. They're not choosing to do it, to sacrifice themselves. But if it's using some animals in order to potentially eradicate cancer from humans, I don't know, but that's the train track thing, right? But I'm the one pulling the switch on those animals. And so that's what then gives me voice to the other side saying, right, but is that our place to make that choice because they're not choosing it themselves? So it's tough. And here's where I would suggest there are no easy answers. I know some from either side would say, yes, the easy answer is mine. And I don't fault those that do find easy answers. I can't say it for myself. I see a variety of sides, but I do lean towards really taking seriously and prioritizing animal welfare and the fact that they do have sentience, that they do experience sensation and feeling and pain, and respecting that and looking for a way to minimize it while also seeking to minimize human suffering. And do kind of feel like any species, when put to the test, is going to prioritize their own species. Now, we have unbelievable strength, and so we have a responsibility, an ethical responsibility, to keep our strength in check, even in defending ourselves. Nonetheless, I do think it's kind of natural that we would lean towards our own species. And so, yeah, again, I don't know. And so, Connor, I'd love to hear your thoughts in response to us, and feel free to disagree, of course. Yeah. I want to hear the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In some aspects, I've learned a lot about how in a evolutionary perspective, like I think like maybe 7 million years ago or so, that like we were just evolving from I think like Australopithecus. I can't say it right,
Australopithecus.
That we used to, and basically it's like knowing, like in our own evolutionary perspective, we were once vulnerable to other animals, and like maybe in that aspect, and maybe seeing that we can know that we have been vulnerable in those times, and knowing that in a way we are still vulnerable for ourselves today, because we want to like fix all the ailments, or like want to like cure, as you mentioned, cure different cancers. Mm-hmm. And I disagree, and knowing that it might come to some sort of like utilitarianism, like the greater good for the greatest number of people. It makes it seem like we have to quote sacrifice some animals for some people that are going through a horrific pain, especially in the human terms.
And it's not easy. I mean, if anybody extremely close to me started suffering with something like cancer, and the only way for them to be cured was for me to be tested on, I would absolutely do it in place of an animal, you know? And I think a lot of people would stand there, but we just don't have that means right now. And so it does look like, unfortunately, we do have to stick with some form of testing on animals. And do I agree with it? Probably not, but for now, that is all we have. So just to jump on the back of that.
All right.
That was a great call, and I think we covered a lot of stuff there, Connor. So I appreciate you calling in with all that.
Yeah, like that is a lot of stuff in just like in a few minutes.
But that's what we're here for. This is exactly the kind of thing we want to hear about.
Absolutely. Really appreciate the call, Connor.
Yeah, we'll let you jump off there, Connor, but we really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. You guys have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Absolutely. Take care.
There we go. That was nice.
I
think it is important that we do discuss this, because I don't know if there's enough conversation, because people are too worried about what they're doing in their own day-to-day lives. Right. And animals do have feelings. We have pets. I don't know about you, Drew, but I've got a dog and 2 cats, and they are family members. They're not, I can't throw them outside and leave them out there in a storm or whatever. You know, they're my family. Sometimes I prefer my animals to people, you know? So,
no,
and I think a lot of people feel the same way.
I don't have any pets at the moment. However, there's this beautiful little squirrel, all white fur, little pink eyes. We've nicknamed her Alberta, and she lives in the neighborhood. There's a forest across from me, and she's always coming up. We've established a relationship with her. Every time, stick my head outside, I'm like, and she comes running up out of the forest wherever she is, and feed her some nuts, the little cashews. I mean, she's great. She recognizes us. She comes right up, almost comes in the house. I haven't let her in the house just yet. I'm not sure I can trust her in the home. I've heard
she's going to steal a TV
stories. I'd almost rather she stole the TV than the things I've heard squirrels doing in homes. But but you see, right, there's clearly more than I was raised that animals are just like programmed robots. Okay.
Right.
It's all robot. It's just instinct, which was framed to me
Right.
as just like they're a robot. They don't have any feelings. They're working off their program, and nothing can deter them from it. And that's just, I study and study time and time again has disproven that, but
Right.
also anecdotally, I think a lot of us have seen it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I've had pets all my life, and they are like, there's not ever been a time that I've had a pet and gone, oh, this one's dull, this one's just a robot. You know, they're family. They're absolute family. We've got some more calls in the queue, but we do have to do some little extra things before we take any more, Drew. I'm sorry.
Let's extra away then.
Here we go. I'm on. If you want to hear about content, if you want to hear our content in audio only form, there we go. Please go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for all the latest ACA shows. There you go. We're also now accepting super chats, which we may read live on air. I did see one pop up, so we'll probably get to that at the end of the show. Obviously, as long as it's YouTube appropriate, that's when we read them out. Have you also, Drew, you may have said this, have you said to yourself, I really love the content that the ACA creates, but obviously not in a whiny British accent like that. You say it in a nice, cool American way. But I wish there was a way I could get it all the time. Well, guess what, Drew? We've got you covered. We now have 2 24/7 live streams. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from over the 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience, and now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. Watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never even heard of. Visit tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/Heathen TV to join in all the fun on those. And last but not least, I do want to thank our lovely, fantastic crew. So if we can bring up the crew cam, there it is. Thank you to all of our video operators and audio operators, mods, note takers, and just genuinely lovely people who make sure we look great. Kelly is also a part of that. Kelly is backup for this show, but Kelly's on everything. Kelly is backup extraordinaire. So we'll say thank you to Kelly at the end of the show as well.
It's like a goddamn superhero.
I feel like if there was a face of the ACA, it would be Kelly. Because Kelly is just there, knows everything, knows everyone. He's awesome, but we'll bring him up later because he's busy. I don't know what he's doing. I just looked down at his camera and it looked very questionable. Anyway, no, it didn't. I'm lying. We do have another call to get to. So if you're ready, Drew, we can jump on in.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We've got Dee, she, her from Iowa. Farm animals are bred for food. Morality is more in how they are farmed. Okay. Hello, Dee. How are you doing?
Hey, Dee.
Hi there. Hi.
Hello.
Great to talk to you guys.
Likewise.
Hello.
What have you got?
Okay. Well, okay. I grew up in ag country. Very rural area. Farming was like the local economy. So while I never farmed myself, I, grew up with farmers. I visited farms, and I think that the future of our agricultural economy needs to lie with the local farmer. We've got to start supporting the local farmers more and more, because these are the more ethical practitioners for raising farm animals.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness. Now I know that modern family farmers still use some, like corporate slaughter, transportation, stuff like that. Some of them that are not in such remote rural areas still use corporate farming methods for those activities. But the farm animals, I keep saying that, I don't know why.
We've all been there. We all
farm
do
You should
that.
hear me talk, okay? When the camera's off, I'm just like,
It is true.
Yeah. He's seen me. Yeah.
Hey, I might as well just be, I might just as well be and go and, but the farm animals that we have now are mostly genetic lines that have been established for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Mhm.
So they are, they are food animals. That's what they were created to be. I think the morality that we're looking for is in how they are farmed. So
Right.
we want to start cutting out those corporate farms. We want to start cutting out, allowing maybe the more rural farmers to go back to their own butchering, and there are co-ops who have like co-op meat lockers in the rural areas for pork and beef and lamb,
Mhm.
eggs, egg laying chickens. We're seeing more ethical communities come together and make ethical and cruelty-free farming more of a reality now than it trending more towards that now than we have in a long time. So I think if we concentrate on that and try to find ways to fund our local farmers, I think that vegetarianism could still be an ethical option.
Right.
And that's my thought. I've tried a couple of times with a few other people to try to get that thought out and try to fully form it. What do you guys think?
You said something interesting about how animals have been bred now for this, and I don't see how that can make it any more right, because they are still animals that have feelings at the end of the day. So I don't see that as a pro for still eating meat and animals. Because people bred dogs specifically for fighting, and does that then make it right that they were forced into fighting each other and one coming out the victor because the other one died? We've got to look at how we can maybe move away from we've got a line of animals here that are 1,000 years old, but their grandparents and their grandparents were chopped up and turned into meat. Does that make it right? What about you, Drew?
Yeah, I was going to start making similar comments. I think it's dangerous to say, just because something has been bred to, some would say to provide for food. Others would say, and I wouldn't necessarily put it in these words, but some would say to be murdered, right? Just because you're bred to be murdered, to be tortured, doesn't mean it's not painful for them, doesn't mean it's unpleasant for them, and doesn't mean that they don't feel it, right? If one thing we know is that in all of the breeding, which I agree has been done very intentionally, the breeding, one thing that was never included, maybe because there isn't a way to do it, or maybe just because they didn't care, is the breeding process did not include eliminating their ability to feel or sense or hurt, be it physically or even emotionally or communally, right? The community that, if I understand right, the community that pigs feel is it's off this, almost off the scales. Like it's among the highest in the world, from what I understand, among the highest. But so being bred for these purposes doesn't necessarily make it ethical. I do agree, though, at least to some degree, with this idea of exploring ways for more ethical farming. As I mentioned earlier, Dee, I don't know if you heard the caller before you and our full conversation, the three of us. But I shared that I find myself, I explored, experimented with veganism actually for years. And where I'm at now, I'm in more a different space. I'm not totally sure the best way to describe it. I don't know that I'll continue being here forever, but this is where I'm at currently, is this idea of simply being more mindful and grateful for the animals, the other creatures of this world that I am now gaining strength from as they share their inner energy from themselves to me, and then as I eventually die and become food for others in the ground, right? And so, kind of looking at it through that type of a lens. So through that lens, I'm not opposed. I eat beef. I eat eggs. I eat just about anything. I'm trying to stay away from white carbs these days. But apart from that, in terms of protein, I kind of eat everything. Okay. But I try and do it more mindfully, more intentionally, more gratefully. That said, though, that's where there is a place for that's where there is this place for more sustainable, more ethical farming practices, so that those animals, before they become food, that they can truly enjoy life to some degree. So where it's wide open fields. So I only buy grass fed beef, okay, open range, free range eggs from free range chickens, right? So trying to be more ethical. I don't know that I have all the right answers, but right, looking for those who aren't given hormones. So I while you were talking, Dee, I looked up, okay, well, what does ethical farming mean? It's not my area of expertise, I confess, right? So I'm seeing things like, where there's expansive pastures, natural diets, appropriate shelter, right? Grass-fed beef, not corn-fed. By the way, I grew up in an agricultural environment similar to yourself, Dee, in rural Midwestern Minnesota. My dad grew up on a dairy farm, and I remember him helping out at my grandpa's farm. When I was a kid, we always had a cow in the pasture in the back. I didn't live on a farm, but we did have a pasture and a cow, okay? So I grow up in this. I'm sympathetic to it. And I know it can be a really emotionally difficult conversation for a lot of the people I love in the community I grew up in. But I do think there are more ethical ways that we need to explore in how we farm. So I don't know if that's helpful. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on this, Dee.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much exactly my point. Is that we know that there are better ways to farm our food animals and keep them without cruelty, without adverse, pain-free, stress-free farming. And I know it's easy for me to say things like this because we are so far into the corporate farming culture now. But I think, like you say, more ethical ways, grass-fed beef, free-range chickens, cruelty-free veal. Veal, actually, cruelty, that's an oxymoron because
Right.
veal is baby lambs, right?
Mhm.
So cutting out veal, that's one thing that I
Yeah.
am against. But anyway, I would like vegans. I would like militant vegans to stop and consider people who maybe don't have the financial means to eat strictly cruelty-free.
That's the other thing.
Or
It is, yeah,
like
it's
yourself,
tough.
that you have an allergy to soy. and it's so hard to find alternatives without the soy.
Yeah.
I would just like to see the hardcore vegans kind of, get off this everybody has to.
Right. I kind of see where you're coming from, but also
about it.
Just to jump in as well, I do understand it. Like there's ways of talking about these things, and sometimes it can come across as maybe bullying people into doing it a certain way. And I'm kind of with you there, but I do also on the flip side of that see why people do speak up about it, because there needs to be some awareness about all these things. So it kind of sometimes does take someone who is what you'd label as hardcore to really shout out about this and say, look, this is why I feel that this is wrong. Maybe just a conversation about this could maybe just slightly change your mind on it and maybe make you rethink about these things. I think the conversations are very important still. Animals are, I was going to say people too. They're not. Animals are, they have feelings and they, some sort of consciousness as well. So do they deserve to be killed, to be eaten? I don't know. I did see in the chat just a fun little thought experiment we could try. Say the year is 2030 and finally aliens have come down and they take some humans away because they look tasty, and they start a human farm and eventually breed certain humans that have more meat and start farming out humans to the aliens that like to eat them, and saying, here you go, this human, we raised them ethically, we put them in a living room and they had a TV and we made sure they had a good diet, but we killed them so that we could eat them. How would you feel about that happening?
That is a good question.
With all due respect to the person that brought that up, I think that hypotheticals like that aren't helpful in this discussion. Right.
I liked it though. I really enjoyed it, Dee.
I'm glad you did, and I'm glad they put it out there. But for me personally, it has no relevance. And I did want to kind of push back on one thing. I don't think an equivalency with breeding fighting dogs is equivalent to breeding meat animals.
Well,
in my particular argument, I don't believe that it's relevant, because ethical treatment and cruelty-free treatment is baked into my argument for this. So I don't think that breeding fighting dogs is equivalent. Having said that, I am very much against fighting dogs.
Right. And I feel like a massive hypocrite here, because I still eat certain meats. So I don't want to be, because I do feel like animals need to be treated right, but also I like how some animals taste still, and I can't get away from that. But I still think that like animals being bred for a purpose, in this case, it's to be eaten at some point. Does that animal should the animal have a say in being bred just to be killed, to be eaten? Well, even if it's in an ethical way, there's still the end point is still that they're going to not be around anymore to be food for someone.
But what are we going to do?
Right. Well, and that is a good question. What are we going to do?
No,
what could we do?
Farm economies.
Yeah.
Farm economies. What I mean, if the hardcore vegans have their way, what are the farmers going to do then? It's going to be a massive disruption to many local economies.
I'd like to jump in with a couple thoughts here on a few different things over the last few minutes here. So I'll just make shoot out a few different responses to a few different things that have been said here that I think might be helpful lenses to look at a few things with. First of all, talking about, the vegans, they need to understand almost sensing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it almost feels like the vegans need to shut up, or something like that. Here's one thing I will always be in favor of, and this is just me. Feel free to disagree. One thing I will always be in favor of is when a human, anyone, if you believe something firmly, passionately, with conviction, if you're all in on something, I want to hear it. And I want you to give me your best shot. So I might not, because I think you owe it to us. Because what if it's better? What if your arguments on something I've never considered before, or what if your arguments, and when I'm saying you, I'm not talking about you, Dee, I'm talking about all of humanity. What if your arguments on something I am against end up convincing me? What if I've never thought about it before? Like I truly believe we have an ethical responsibility to loudly and vigilantly and passionately proclaim whatever it is our viewpoint is. So yes, I might not agree. I don't agree with, at least not the classic stereotypical vegan, at least not them. I don't agree with their framework or whatever they're looking at from certain ways, but I 100% want them to argue their case. I kind of hope they'll allow a little bit of leeway for those of us who agree, but that's a different issue. If they want to be assholes, whoever the particular person is, definitely not all are. But if somebody who's a vegan wants to be an asshole and not allow for any variability from other people, well, that's a different issue. Okay, whatever, be an asshole. But I still want to hear your position on things. Mm-hmm. You owe it to me. And I believe that I owe it to you that you hear mine. So that's one thing I want to state. I do want to, one way, again, it's just four things. That's the first. I want to just shooting out a couple things here in response to, as I've heard Dee and John, the two of you going back and forth in conversation in the past few minutes. As far as the fighting dogs analogy, the way I heard it at least was not that John was equating, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was not John equating raising animals for food with raising animals to fighting. That's not what I heard. What I believe I heard was the justification in an animal being bred for a particular purpose, making that purpose ethical. Right. That is what I think was argued against, and that I 100% believe. Granted, the purpose of breeding a fighting dog is very different than the purpose in raising an animal for food. And one might be ethical and the other one might not. But nonetheless, the correlation of an animal being raised for a purpose, bred for a purpose, makes it automatically ethical is I would suggest is absolutely hands down wrong. Okay, that's my second thing. Third thing, moving on real quick. Aliens. I actually love it. So here's where I see the messiness of humanity, the messiness of life, is I look at it, I'll agree, Dee, I don't like the equation, and yet I kind of fucking do. Like because it's beautiful. I do think it absolutely 100% applies. I think it 100% is a fantastic thought experiment to this. But here's the thing. Now I'm in a pickle, a proverbial pickle, if you will, because now I have to sit here and I have to say, well, shit. If an alien comes and harvests me and takes me on up, I mean, I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't. That's true. I got to sit with that. I don't know that means that I can't, that means I have to become a vegan or a vegetarian. I don't know that means that. I mean, I don't think, I'm trying to think of like an animal that would get eaten by an elk. I don't know that an elk likes being eaten by a lion. That doesn't mean that's different. What are some meat eating animals that also get meat eaten? I'm sure there's some out there. I can't think of any at the moment, but I'm sure they don't want to be preyed upon, but yet they still got to eat. I suppose the difficulty, the gray area here is we don't have to eat meat. That is what makes it messy. Welcome to the messiness of the human experience. Yeah. But I do think that it 100% applies. And the last thing I'd say is, what about the farmers? Yes, I grew up, and then I'll shut the fuck up and you want to hear more from each of you. We can continue the conversation. But what about the farmers? Here again, I empathize, I sympathize. I'm from a farming community. I get it. And as humanity advances, as the world continues, there are industries that grow obsolete. I'm not saying that farming will ever grow obsolete, But certainly, if we conclude that it's unethical, again, I'm not suggesting that it is unethical, but if we would conclude that it is unethical, then that better not fucking be. We better not let it wag the dog saying, but we need the jobs, so keep doing the unethical thing.
Right.
No, fuck that. That is not how we ethic. That is not how we live if we're living ethical. Again, I don't think all farming is inherently unethical, but we can't let the one drive the other. Okay, we can find other jobs. We can find other things. We have to for survival. But we can't say, what about this industry? Because people are employed there, therefore we have to find a way to justify it, even if it's unethical. No. So I don't know. I don't want to go on and on, but those were a few smatterings I heard in my mind. Ooh, sometimes I hear the voices between the two of you, Dee and John, as you were kind of going back and forth there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Have you got any closing thoughts there, Dee?
Excuse me. Gosh, yeah, a lot of them running around.
Yeah.
I am not in any way saying that if the question ever becomes settled of the ethicality of it, is that even a word? I don't know.
It is now.
Let's make
I like
one.
it.
And
Yeah.
I would definitely, cool. Call up Webster's for me, guys.
Right.
I love it.
I would absolutely, stop if I ever became convinced of the unethicality of eating meat or consuming eggs or whatever. I wasn't trying to take it all the way to a logical conclusion. I was just trying to throw out some ideas.
And it's very much warranted. It's like all opinions are valid in this kind of conversation. I think you did the right thing. Absolutely.
And when I say I want people to express their deeply held beliefs or thoughts or perspectives, frameworks, that includes you, Dee. I'm really glad that you've called and we're having this conversation.
Me too. And I do have fun talking to you guys and pounding out ideas. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world. And I really do. I appreciate all three of you guys' viewpoints, and you did give me a couple of things to think about. So
that's good.
Thanks.
That's what we're here for.
Thanks for your time, and thanks for your time, and talk to you again. You have a great weekend.
You too. Don't be a stranger, Dee. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee.
All right.
That was great.
Wow.
It's a really.
John, wow.
I didn't know that this was the direction of the show today, but I mean, I'm open to it. I mean, I'm still learning a lot about veganism and all this stuff. Eat nuts, not meat. I'll have you know, today I had peanut butter on toast for my lunch. So hopefully that pleases some people. We do have more in the queue. And a regular on the show is John, him from Canada. Would like to apologize for his prior behavior. Hi, John. You're on with John and Drew. How's it going?
Hello, Drew. Hello, John Skeptic. Hello, Drew. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Good to have you on, John.
Good. Okay, I'm just going to get straight to it.
Okay.
Drew, we've spoken before, and the last time we spoke, we got heated. I said something I shouldn't have, and I misbehaved. I didn't behave like a gentleman. I'd like to apologize for that.
Wow.
Okay. Well, let's hear it.
Yeah. What? I mean, do we want to bring up what was said before, and just so we can hash that out and then discuss and then move on?
Okay. I will remind you what we spoke about, but I don't want to get into the argument. But
right.
About, trans people.
Mm.
Yeah, we're talking about that.
Okay. Well, it's good that you've apologized for it. if it got heated. I feel like, there's a time and a place for conversation, but not necessarily for getting angry with each other. We're just humans at the end of the day. We just want to have conversations and find things out about each other and, move on as we can. But John, you have a lot of great things to say. I've heard you many times. So since you're here, do you have something about, let's go, supernatural belief that you want to discuss with us?
Oh, okay. Well, the only supernatural thing I can ever talk to you about, or I ever witnessed, like once I was at work. Okay. Here's the weird thing. I was at work. We were having a conversation about ghosts. And then half an hour later, I was working, and I swear to God, a plate just moved by itself. Nothing. There was nothing that could have moved it by itself. I didn't touch it. It didn't fall. It just... Okay, you know how a frisbee is thrown?
Right.
It's like the plate went off the thing. It flew like a frisbee all by itself. And I was the only one who saw it. I asked my coworker, "Did you see that?" He said, "See what?" I said, I saw it with my own eyes. And he said, maybe the ghost heard us, and that was their way of showing it. To this day, I can't explain it. Maybe it was my imagination. I do not know.
Let's okay. I'm going to explore this because this is right up my alley. This is the kind of thing fun. I love. So I used to work in a pet store with some people. I was 19, and in the back room, the ladies that I worked with were convinced that this place was haunted. It was also at a time that I was still a believer in supernatural stuff, so I was fully on board with it being haunted. Terrified me, but I was very on board with it. And they were talking about some supernatural things happening, bags falling off shelves, which always happened. Even when I was there, no one would be around and a bag would fall off, and we had no explanation for it. And they started fabricating these stories about the ghosts that potentially could have lived there. One day, in the back storeroom, one of the ladies walked in, and a broom was standing up in the middle of the floor, not leaning on anything. It was just standing there. And she came and got a few of us.
Like it was a person? Like a person?
Like a person was holding the broom. The broom was not leaning on anything. It was just standing there in the middle of the room. And we had we walked around the thing. We eventually moved it, and it was not attached to anything. We had no explanation for it. So what would you, if I was to, I mean, I am telling you this story, John. I'm telling you this story now. How would you respond to that? What would you think when you hear a story like that, and then try and give some kind of explanation for it? Because that's what humans do. We hear something, we go, "Oh, well, that's obviously X or it's Y." I'm telling you this story now, John. How would you explain that away, or would you explain it away?
Well, we'd have to do a thorough investigation, see if you were under the influence of any drugs or.
Okay. That's an excellent question. Go ahead, John. Continue.
We have to rule out anything like technological, for instance, like they say in Star Trek. Any advanced form of technology or science would appear magical to Stone Age people. And plus, but even if we were to rule that out, it wouldn't prove the supernatural 100%. It would just be unexplained.
Okay, and so we can take what you've just said there and now apply it to yours. And so, John, were you under the influence of any? I don't need to know that. But we can now apply that to your experience. And what do we conclude?
Well, like I said, I wasn't under the influence of any drugs or anything like that. I was completely sane and sober. I wasn't even thinking about the conversation about the ghost. I was thinking about my work, and I saw it. Right. But then again, I'm someone who's open to these kind of things. I'm into sci-fi and stuff like that. So someone might think that that's where it comes from. But I swear, I was not thinking about that at the time.
So I'm going to ruin my story now ever so slightly, because for months we all believed that this thing had happened. And then one of the staff members admitted that they had gone into the storeroom earlier and balanced the broom in the middle of the floor.
Oh, wow.
So there was a naturalistic explanation for us. Yeah. And they showed us how they did it. So it was real. They just, like, these brooms were old and they had like bristles sticking out, so they could perfectly balance. That was admitted to us. could it have been, John, that one of your co-workers maybe knew that you had a belief and thought, well, this is a great way to get John. Maybe let's try and make a plate fly off a side. He'll think it's a ghost and it'll be hilarious.
I don't think that's the case because I wasn't there for very long.
Oh, okay.
I don't. When I think about it, I don't see when they would have the time to do it because, like.
Right. Likewise, we didn't know when the person would have the time to balance a broom.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a lot of what all of this is, John. Is it so? Like for me, I'm more boring. I've not seen any ghosts or apparent ghosts like either of the two Johns have. That said, to kind of play the other side of things, like I guess I'm open to seeing a ghost. Now, I don't believe that ghosts exist. I've never seen any evidence of ghosts. I've never been convinced by any of the so-called documentaries on ghosts or things like that. I default towards an inclination not to believe that ghosts exist. I have not been convinced by any alleged evidence, including the anecdotal kind just shared. That said, I guess I'm not opposed to there being evidence. If somebody showed up or there was a documentary or something that actually did convince me, I guess I'm open to listen. Kind of like with the other call, where if somebody really truly believes something passionately or there's evidence for it, they're convinced. I want to hear it, to know it. I try and be readily available to correct whatever my perspective may be and everything. So maybe there's ghosts, but I'm kind of skeptical because so far I've made it 45 years, never having seen anything inclining me towards it. So I think from either side, right? It's something I'm struck by just as I hear your story and some of your discussion with Mr. Skeptic right here, is okay, maybe sort of like John the Skeptic's story, he didn't have all the information right away. Do any of us ever have all the information on anything, right? And so I think it's maybe the most appropriate response, default position is, such as with your story, John, not John the Skeptic, John the caller, is to, maybe the best default position is to simply say, yeah, from what I've seen, I think there might be a ghost. And yet I acknowledge that I don't have all the info. Maybe there's some explanation out there, kind of like an unidentified flying object. Well, it's I don't know the identity yet. Maybe the identity is an alien. Maybe the identity is, some flesh in the pan, whatever they are, right? So some industrialized weapon. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. I'm ranting. I'm rambling.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm good at it. It's my spiritual gift. Continue, John. I'm sorry.
Okay. I want to ask your opinion about this, and I don't want to get into an argument. I just want to know your opinion. People who claim that they died for a few seconds or a minute, they claim they gone to the other side, they saw Jesus, they come back, they give a detailed description, they could even draw the picture, and then you have people who claim that they had a similar experience and they see the same face. For instance, in the movie Heaven is for Real, a boy in the United States who died for a brief moment, he claimed to saw Christ, he drew the picture, and coincidentally, a little girl in France drew the exact same picture right to the last detail. And keep in mind, these two people lived on opposite sides of the ocean, and they never met each other. How would you explain that?
Well, and something similar happened in my life. No NDEs. And I will say, though, it is funny, not funny, funny, but it's odd how in near-death experiences, the folks who see something generally see the thing that they've already believed in. I have a friend who is an atheist. He died after a 10K run. He was very unhealthy and he ran the 10K. He died for, I think he was out for 6 minutes before they managed to resuscitate him. And being a non-believer, he didn't have any recollection of anything. So it does seem to be like, okay, yeah, this person believes in Jesus. They've now died. And now all of a sudden their experience was something to do with Jesus. The thing that I have that's similar to this picture-in-picture thing, when I was very little, I am fortunate in that I never believed in a God, but I was brought up to believe in afterlife, spirits, ghosts, people talking to me. My grandmother was a clairvoyant, which is you can see dead people. I was convinced that by my family that I had the power of clairaudience because I would hear voices, and it was the most horrific thing. But one time when I was a child, I saw clairvoyance obviously came true for me, and I saw a man from Asia walk through my grandmother's door. Not the door was closed, so he walked through the door, and it terrified the bejeepers out of me. And I ran and told my mother and my grandmother, because those were who I lived with at the time. And my mother was massively into the whole spirit realm and all this stuff, and she went and visited someone who draws spirit guides. She believed that everybody has a spirit guide, and I'm going to draw your spirit guide. And the picture that this spirit guide artist drew that claimed was my mother's spirit guide was the exact same face of the man that I saw walk through the door that time. And no explanation as for why that happened. It could potentially have been like a trauma response, and I saw the picture after I'd had the experience, and then my brain went, that's who you saw, and it all tied up that way. There are unexplained things where people can draw. I don't know, if it sounded like you said they drew Jesus. Pictures of Jesus have existed. I say Jesus, but there's an artist's impression of white Jesus have existed for decades, if not centuries. And so there's almost now a preconceived idea of what Jesus looks like. And so if somebody has a near-death experience and goes, oh, I experienced Jesus, this is what they look like, and somebody else did the same thing on the other side of the world, that wouldn't be spectacular to me, because there were already images of that before they had the experience.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
100%.
I just wanted to know what you thought about it, but
yeah,
anyway.
Probably the same as you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, gentlemen, I didn't want to take away too much of your time. I just wanted to call to apologize, and we had a good conversation. Did we have a good conversation
today? I loved this conversation. It was great.
Yeah. It was great. Thanks, John.
All right.
I'm sorry to hear about the plate, and I hope that one day we get some explanation for it. But for now, let's just keep going. I don't know, and it's okay to say I don't know.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. Okay, well, have a good evening, gentlemen.
You too. Thanks, John.
Take care.
It was great.
Absolutely.
There we go. It's nice.
What a great night.
Yeah, this has been a very chilled talking about veganism and apologies. Sometimes from folks that you like. John is a very regular caller and great. I'm really, really great that he, came in and did that. It takes a big person to do that. We've got some voicemails that we can do. Where is I'm just scrolling. I'm scrolling around on the document, Drew, because I'm like, we've got some time to fill, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Here we go. We've got a voicemail that we can now listen to and react to if you'd like. The voicemail is, where did horses come from?
Okay. How did something living come from something there's nothing living? How did life come from non-life? And the way the body's made up, what chance would have this body had to be made with your eyes, your heart, your lungs, and being male and female, because there's only two genders, and how were they made to breed or to mate to become a baby? And how was everything, like how was cows made? How was horses made? How was fish made? You can't prove it. You would have a better chance of, say, hitting the lottery 1,000 times in a row using the exact same numbers. It's against all odds.
Okay. against all odds, apparently.
Oh.
I think my initial reaction is the language used. How were cows made? How were horses made? Well, you're already at the point where you think things were made, so you're already searching, you're reaching, because you go, well, there's got to be a reason that this was made this way. So what made it? You're already on a losing battle there, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the big thing there, and yeah, there were several phrases, comments that were made that could form the basis of whole additional conversations. Mm-hmm. But the big thing for me with the crux of why the caller, and I missed their name if we have it, but why the caller called in is, okay, where could life have come from if it wasn't made by another living being? Okay. And so on the one hand, there's another whole trail of, okay, well, if life can't come from non-life, then where did the life giver get its life from? And it is a complete bullshit non-answer to say, oh, well, but they were just eternal, or they were a self-giving form of life. Okay, that's bullshit. Well, then if you can use it for that, why can't you use it? It's such a cop-out. But to go back to the core thing, I mean, do I know the answer? No, I know this. I know there's theories. Mm-hmm. Some scientists propose that RNA, the molecule similar to DNA, was the first replicating molecule. Right. Okay, there's other theories that there's these hydrothermal vents, right, or near deep sea in the water, where chemicals and energy could have supported early life. Right, there's other ideas around metabolic networks. Okay. There's all these ideas. I'm not, again, I've said this 25,000 times tonight, not my area of expertise. Okay.
Neither of us are biologists.
But it doesn't have to be, right? No. Here's what I know is I know there's theories. I don't need to know everything. What I do know is saying God did it, but no one created a God. It isn't helpful. That doesn't answer the question. That's not helpful at all. Right.
And even if we did say that a God did it, let's just say, it was some creator. How do we know it's this person specific creator that was the perpetrator in this instance? Exactly. I am like Drew. No, I'm not an expert by any means, but I do have friends who are scientists and biologists and all this stuff, and have so many times I've asked this question, like, how? What do you know as a scientist? What is your explanation? They always point me to the Uri Miller experiment, which has the closest current understanding to how it all could have happened. And I am a big fan of that. Let's zap some chemicals with some electricity and some warm water and see what happens. That's the very dumbed down version. It kind of makes sense to me in that it can happen in a way that doesn't need an external force to go, here, I'm going to do some magic and make some things happen. If there are naturalistic explanations for all these things, where do cows come from? Where do horses come from? It has been shown through fossil records that there are common ancestors to all life on Earth. There are records of it. The evolution, especially, is the most supported theory in science. There is so much evidence, and it's not just fossil records. It's all the other gubbins that goes with it. Go and speak to a biologist. But yes, okay, evolution and abiogenesis aren't the same. But he also did say, well, cows. How did cows get here? How did horses get here? So I feel like I'm valid in saying that. But I'm a massive fan of the Uri Miller explanation for how life came to be. So
yeah,
there you go.
If we're going for, well, which possible origin story hypothesis feels right to me, feels best to me, okay, then sure. Coming from some eternal being such as a God, it can feel just as good, if not better, as anything else. And that might give it the advantage if we're just looking at it through that lens. What I've been taught, what tradition teaches, what feels comfortable to me, what I feel within the fabric of my internal being. Okay. If we're looking at evidence, though, there are a few different theories scientifically on where life could have started. We don't have a conclusive answer. That's true. That said, every one of them has so much more scientific standing than any concept of an eternal God created us.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, I got to go. I don't have to know the answer, but I'm certainly going to be inclined to the one that has more scientific backing rather than just something I was raised with.
Right. And which one am I? I'm least convinced by the creator one as well. There's nothing to back up that. It's just to me, a very lazy answer. I don't know. God did it.
Yeah. God of the gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Anything I don't know the answer to, I'm just going to insert God. Well, it's God.
That does happen way more than I care to admit. Even around here, people don't have explanations for something. It is, oh, well, God did that.
Yep.
My mother-in-law, nearly her vehicle was nearly hit by a very large tree in a storm. It missed by 6 inches. And everybody's been talking about how God had a hand in it. Right? I mean, thanks God for saving my mother-in-law's car. Now, if you could help explain where life comes from, that'd be great. Instead of saving a white Toyota, please, can you give us something else? God works in mysterious ways, apparently, and saving my mother-in-law's car was apparently the one last week. We do have another call in the queue there. Excellent. Coming up, so we will get to another one. But just want to again thank Kelly for sticking in and being the backup host. He's always here, and I don't know if we can bring him up right now, but Kelly, we just want to thank you for always doing the backups. So far, we're going to get to at least one more call, but just so far, have you had like a favorite call? Or don't forget to unmute Kelly. You're pretending. He's pretending to mute now. No, he's still muted. Kelly he forgets sometimes. I thought he was acting then. Oh, his mic's broken. Well, for those who can't see, can't see, Kelly's on the screen and he looks very handsome as always.
Absolutely.
But he's not. I don't know. He's here.
He's amazing. I mean, that's what I know. He's amazing.
Like I say,
he's got great jokes. Yes.
One of the faces of the ACA is Kelly. Yes. And he's now, it looks like, those who can't see, it looks like he's licking his microphone right now, trying to get it to work. We do a lot of stuff on Truth Wanted. Apparently that we've now hit a new low. We were talking about circumcision and foreskins earlier. Now Kelly's licking his microphone. I can only apologize. Whilst we're waiting for the calls in the queue as well, we do have some super chats as well to read out. I did see one, if the crew are okay. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, crew. I'm not sorry. Atlas Die, I can't watch live, but I had to drop in to send a message. It's really good to see you again, Drew. We were with Atlas down when we were in person.
Yes, we both met Atlas at the same time we met each other.
That's
one
right.
Great big party.
We just need to have a big old group hug again. We
do. We need to have a regathering.
It's been too long, to be honest. Yeah. It would be nice to see you in person. And another one, Miranda Rensberger. But is there a naturalistic explanation for how a British circle can float? There are no natural explanations for that. There's not even an explanation for why I take on meat form just to do call-in shows like this. Afterwards, I am very tired and I go into my circle booth and become a floating circle once more. It's that's just how it is. I'm glad that my wife
to ask.
Yeah, I'm the British floating circle, and so it's a thing. It's a thing, Drew.
Again, I'm scared to ask.
Yeah, I would. Have you got anything big coming up, Drew? Any talks that
you know what? I intentionally have been drawing back and, speaking less and doing some less events, things like that, conferences, and kind of trying to very intentionally just live and embody my own humanity and find spaces where I can contribute in local community. So it's a little less flashy. I don't draw an income from having a pretty face or anything like that. I've got just a regular day job. And when I'm not doing that, I'm just trying to be human, I guess. So
all I heard was that you're
no promos. I guess buy books that have already been written and, watch things that have been done. I do really enjoy doing shows like this and maybe doing more of them. That said, beyond shows like this, I'm just being a local human here in the Twin Cities. If you're ever passing through Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, make sure to give me a shout, say hello, either come to a local event we're doing or just drop in and we'll grab a coffee or a whiskey or something.
A coffee? Did you say a coffee?
I don't know. Did I say a coffee?
You said coffee that way.
Did I say coffee or did I just say a cup of coffee? It sounded a little bit coffee. Yeah, no, it sounded I don't know.
Oh, here are some things. Well, all I heard through all of that is that you're denying people those beautiful tones that you have when you talk out. I'm not talking anymore. This is my voice. Kelly should now be working as a backup host with a working microphone. Kelly, are you there? Unmute. No, Kelly's broken.
No. Kelly, I thought you were going to join the party this time.
I was so excited to hear from you.
Logged out, came back in.
It's all just gone very wrong. I mean,
don't we have production team? Don't we have like some old audio clip of Kelly we can just play and he can mouth the words?
Yeah, right. Just pretend. That'd be great.
Yeah,
or we could do it. We could pull him up and then like be his voice. That would never work in a million years. We haven't. This isn't me, I don't think, says Kelly. We're still waiting, and there's some screen calls coming through. They're not quite ready to go on yet, so we're going to vamp just for another minute or two, just to see, because I want to give them a chance. We're here to get the truth, Drew, and I'd like to get some more truth. And the next one, if it goes on to the queue, I really want to hear about because it's definitely something that I'm interested in.
Really?
Yeah. And you don't get to see any of this.
I know. I don't have the power. I don't have the tools. I'm just
there you go,
hanging out over here,
there you go,
waiting in anticipation to see what happens.
I'm really confused. I think something weird's going on in Call-In Studio right now, and I need the crew to go. I think we're not going to get these calls.
Do we have any stats? Well, if we're just waiting for calls to come in, do we have any stats or numbers on what that fundraiser did? There was this incredible fundraiser.
There was.
A couple weeks
They've
ago.
also got some screenshots.
We do.
Of things, yeah. And so I come on this show every now and then, and I say stupid things apparently. And one of the screenshots, I'm going to go with the first one, number one, because let's go in order so that the crew look at this horrid face. Evolution is a theory. That's why it's called the theory of evolution. It's not the fact of evolution or the history of evolution. It's only a theory. That's not me saying that, I don't think. Was it? No, and if it was, I must have been saying it in such a way that like I was taking on the persona of a non-believer. But I was talking about the Bible not belonging in science museums. How do you feel about that, Drew? Because I don't think it should be there.
The Bible in science museums?
Right.
No, not science museums, maybe history museums or other museums artifacting cultural influences. Sure. If we're doing a historical, I could even see it. This might be a little controversial, but I could see it being present in a piece, in a science, in an exhibit about historical cultural perspectives on where things came from, life and things like that. Sure, it's a perspective, it's a historical lens, but not actual science. Hell no. So
I agree with that. I like there's nothing inside this book that has anything to do with real, like, actual science. There's some claims made about look at that book. For those, there are some people who are audio only, and I just wanted to point out that Drew's holding up what looks like a very well thumbed Bible.
Oh, So well thumbed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I preached out of this Bible.
Did you really? Look, there's
For
even
20
notes
years
in there. There's
or something like that.
annotations.
Yeah. Oh, so many. So many. Look at those.
I'm very proud of my stepdaughter right now because she has been a non-believer for a few years now. We talk about all religions, and she's decided that she wants to read the Bible.
Yes.
And she reads a chapter and she'll come to me and say, John, I just read this bit and I think this. And she says some really great things about how silly the book is. And it's coming from a 10-year-old. It's amazing.
That's amazing. No, that's really, truly amazing.
Well, okay, look, we have a call ready and they've been talking for a while, so I'd like to give them a chance. We have, and I'm sorry to do this to you again, Drew, but we have another John from Ohio.
There be an H in the name.
There is an H in the name, so that makes it a bit easier. Hi, John. You're on with John and Drew. You're saying here that Christianity has it wrong about the afterlife, and you can prove it. There's no mind-body dualism. Without that, there is no Okay, come on. Let's hear this.
Okay, great. This is awesome. I love it. I can't wait to prove it. Okay, so all right. So mind-body dualism states that there are separate entities, the mind and the body, and the mind is a separate substance from the body. I can prove that the brain is the source of consciousness. First of all, there is a structure in the brain. There was an experiment which was done where researchers stimulated this part of the brain called the claustrum, and that caused immediate unconsciousness in subjects. Okay, so that kind of indicates that that consciousness is a property of the brain which can be turned off. And also, there is another experiment which was done, which the researchers were able to actually see memories being formed, and that's another piece of evidence that consciousness and mental processes are properties of the brain and not anything else. Because if you're able to see neurons being formed as you learn, then how could you argue anything else that this is a process of the brain?
Right.
So those are two pieces, and I was just wondering what you thought of that.
Drew, you go. My brain is fried.
I have a clarifying question, if I may, John, with the H. So educate me a little bit here. Okay. Take me by the hand. Help me see where you're at. Okay. So mind-body dualism, right? So the mind and the body are distinct entities. So you're talking about, though, how consciousness is a product of the brain. So are you proposing, or are you because I've seen versions of dualism over the years, over the decades, studied it to some degree, but it's been a little while. It's been a good decade since I've really looked at it closely. But so are you suggesting that the mind as a separate entity from the body and the consciousness being a product of the brain, which is part of the body, are you suggesting that this mind part is separate from consciousness? Or where is the mind? Connect that for me, or disconnect it.
No. What I'm saying is that the mind is a process that the brain does, in the same way that digestion is a process of the stomach and the intestines. It's
and like how sight is the process of the eyeballs.
What was that?
He's equating it.
Yeah, I'm just another equivalence where sight is like the process of the eyeballs.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Would it be similar to that, John, where sight is a process of the eyeballs, consciousness and the mind are a process of the brain.
Mm-hmm. Sound
digestion
and hearing
is a process of the digestive system.
The ears.
Right. Right. It's the same thing as the stomach. The process that the stomach carries out is digestion, whereas the process that the brain carries out is consciousness and mind.
So are you saying that consciousness, okay, here's, I guess, part of the distinction that I'd like you to suss out for me, just because right now I'm just trying to absorb what your position is. Because again, there's lots of forms of dualism. I've seen most of the forms of dualism I'm more familiar with from a Christian or theistic lens. So I'm just trying to take time to really see where I see you're coming from, rather than cornering you in a box or arguing against something that you don't necessarily believe. So the mind is a process produced by the brain that is distinct from the body. So,
right.
I don't know. I guess I'm struggling to see the significance. I'm tempted to say, okay, digestion is separate from the body. It's not the body itself, but it still happens and it's still real.
Well, no,
I'm tempted. I don't mean this disrespectfully. Well, let me just finish my comment, and I have a question for you. I do want to hear your thoughts. Just let me get this question out first. It's a clarifying question. So I'm tempted to say, okay, who cares? What I want you to do is make me care. Further clarify why it matters. Help me care.
But you see, if consciousness is a process which is carried out by the brain, then it follows logically that when the brain dies, consciousness stops.
Right. And I'm fully on board with you there, but I don't know how that then doesn't prove enough, disprove. Well, just let me get there as well. Doesn't disprove an afterlife, because I'm pretty certain that in the belief structure, and not that I hold this, and I could be wrong, but when people believe that they die, it's not that their mind lives on forever. It's that this soul that they believe is in the body is what lives on forever. Nothing to do with mind and processes. It's like a separate entity that they believe is inside them that moves on. I don't believe in a soul, and I don't, but it's up to the theists to prove that that's what happens and goes on. I kind of feel like I know where you're going with this, but I just some clarification on it would be helpful.
I have an answer for that.
Okay.
So if you look at what is the definition of a soul, which I have looked at, all of the characteristics which theists describe as being characteristic of a soul, those are processes of the brain. Those are processes of the mind, and it's processes of the mind, which is carried out by the brain. So, so what I'm saying is there is no such thing as a soul. Because all of the processes, all of the things we can attribute to a soul are actually processes of the mind, which is carried out by the brain.
Right. And I'm going to say that I'm fully with you. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm not convinced that there's a soul. So I don't really see a need for that. But if you think you have a way of disproving a soul, I would write some papers and I would start submitting them, because you could be onto some absolute groundbreaking stuff that may not have been spoken about before.
Well, okay. I'm so excited to share my views with you guys. Okay, I don't have to write papers because papers have already been written. I'm not a
there you go.
scientist. So I'm not going to write a paper, but that's okay because papers have already been written. Number one, the paper about how the colostrum, if you stimulate the colostrum electrically, it shuts off consciousness. And then when you release that stimulation, the consciousness returns. So, doesn't that tell you that consciousness is produced by the brain if you can shut it off just by stimulating a certain part of the brain?
you are, I think, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like you're talking to the folks who all kind of already agree with you. My suggestion would be something like this. Take this to a theist call-in show.
Yeah. Along with that, John, to both of the Johns, I agree. If what?
Yeah.
Yeah, John, if you're
it's more comfortable for me. I'm sorry. I just want to say it's more comfortable for me to preach to the choir.
Well, that's fine. If we're here to help you with that, great. I'm all for
Absolutely. If you're, and maybe I didn't quite grasp the original setup of the call. If you're calling to, which now it sounds like this was the point of the call. If you're calling to convince us or give us, evidence that when a human dies, their consciousness dies with them. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I already believe that. I believe,
right. That's right.
I don't have a paper per se, but I believe Dan Dennett has written on that. Several things. It's been well established in my mind that, the term dualism is what threw me off. Because I've heard that term used primarily in other contexts. So that's maybe something to keep in mind is sometimes some of those fancy sounding words, philosophical, sometimes they can carry baggage for various audiences that you don't anticipate. For me, it carried some baggage that tripped me up. But no, I think we're all on the same page. I agree with you. Yeah,
I'm sorry, John, I just muted you ever so slightly just to let Drew get that out, but carry on.
Okay, no. Here's the last thing. So the colostrum, when you stimulate it electrically, consciousness shuts off. Scientists have been able to see memories being formed. And also my last point, which I'd love to get out, is that there was actually a 60 Minutes show which these researchers were able to, they showed the subjects different objects, and they recorded their brain activity while viewing different objects. And then they were able to, without knowing which object the person was viewing, they were able to guess 96% of the time which object the person was viewing. So,
right.
I don't even know why you guys have a show, because if consciousness is produced by the brain, then theistic belief is over.
I'll tell you why, John, because it's fun.
By the brain, and so when the brain dies, consciousness stops.
Right.
And so therefore, there can't be a soul in an afterlife. So that's just a fiction.
Yeah.
And I understand why I understand why the writers of the Bible wanted to promote this idea, but those people were not neuroscientists. Okay. They didn't know what we know today.
Right. And I'm okay. I'm glad that we managed to give you a platform to vocalize this, but I do feel like you're maybe in a position now to go and take this to some believers and say, look, this is what I've found out. What do you think about that? Because we're all like, okay, yeah, the brain shuts off, and we all agree with you, John, to some degree. We're all there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well then, how could anybody justify theistic belief after that? You could see my chain of logic there. That consciousness is produced by the brain. So therefore, when the brain dies, consciousness stops, and so there's no soul and no afterlife. So how could anyone believe in Christianity? That's my point.
that then it becomes a huge jump, because there are also like a ton of other religions that people still believe in, regardless of whether or not there's an afterlife or no afterlife or any of that. So, I'm with you on the brain activity side of it. I'm not necessarily with you on the, well, then that means Christianity's dumb. I feel like it is, but you know what I mean. I'm not agreeing with it for that reason.
Well, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I see it as a clear chain of logic. Okay.
Right. And that's great. But I honestly do. I rather than rehashing stuff, because we've got one more call that we do want to get to. I think what you've got is some great stuff there, John. And I really implore you to go and take it to some believers.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, John.
All right.
John with an H.
Thank you guys for letting me air my views.
You are more than
really
welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks, sir.
neighbor.
Okay.
I'm saying neighbor because
All
I
right,
live
thanks.
in Kentucky. So see ya. Take care. There you go. That was good. That was good. I mean, I like that we're also a platform for folks, but there is one more person to speak to, and this one, Drew, it looks good. So we've got Dan here from Ohio. Pronouns are he, him, and he's saying that the DNA of octopi is so different than every other DNA that it lends credence to panspermia. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hey, folks, did you just say I was from Ohio?
It said that, yeah.
Oh, that's
Oh, Canada.
Oh,
So
this is
novel.
Canada. Okay, well, wherever you're from, hello.
Ohio, Canada.
This is great. I was going to call you neighbor as well, but now I'm not going to.
Anyhow, no politics.
Go ahead, Dan.
I am calling to talk about alien ideas. And so I know you said you're not geneticists or biologists, but if you look at an octopus and the things it can do, and it is so incredibly unlike any other creature on Earth, that it just seems to indicate that maybe there is other sources of life other than random generation on Earth. And do you think that the octopus being so weird could be evidence of that, divergent evolution on a planet from something very different?
You know what?
Octopi just are weird.
I mean, there are plenty of weird creatures, right? There are some creatures that look like mammals, have beaks like ducks, and lay eggs, and have poison spines. There are some creatures that have hundreds of legs, and there are some creatures that only have a couple. There are lots of weird creatures. Would I like it to be kind of some sort of evidence that maybe there's something out there? Absolutely. I'm a big fan of us not being the only life in the entire universe, or maybe even in just the Milky Way galaxy. Is it something like 200 or 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and each star could have a set amount of planets, and some of those planets could be in the habitable zone. And there's something like 200 million possibilities for planets having some kind of life on there. Absolutely, I'm all for that. Do I know that to be the case? Absolutely not. Would I like octopuses to have traveled on a comet or asteroid or something and bumped into Earth and their DNA landed here, and that's why we have octopi? Absolutely, I'd love it. Is there anything to suggest really at the moment? I don't know. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I think similar to where you're coming from. I mean, I love the idea. I kind of hope that they did come from alien life from some other planet or some other part of the universe or something like that. Like, that sounds really fucking cool. I'm not in any way opposed to that being true, or feeling a compulsion to discredit it, or that can't be. That said, I do have to ask, right? And I haven't dug into it a lot, so I confess my ignorance here. But things that I would want to ask myself if and when I was looking deeper into it is, obviously there's the whole category of, cephalopods, right? There's cuttlefish, there's squid, right? There's nautilus there. And then there's beyond that, there's mollusks. I don't think mollusks are cephalopods, but then, from there, I would be interested to look at, okay, so are there other connections that go beyond that whole category where it does connect back further? My inclination is, if there is this whole movement of people that theorize that octopi may come from another alien origination, I would give them the benefit of a doubt and say, well, clearly they've looked into it, and there must appear to be a huge disconnect between cephalopods and all the rest of the animal kingdom. That said, I find that I'm kind of skeptical that that's the case. I would think we would find some kind of connection. But there must not be one, or why would you conclude that aliens must be involved? So those are just some of the questions that I would look to. And I'm curious, Dan, if you have answers to those. Are there any connections? Are we sure that they're completely disconnected from the rest of the animal kingdom? And why not cephalopods as a whole? Why specifically just octopi?
From the vague amount of research I have personally done, octopi were the ones that came up with the unique and distinct behaviors and tendencies that were unusual compared to other similar creatures. I'm a layperson looking at things I've heard and read online. So, I mean, you know.
I would suggest, Dan, reaching out to some folks who know about this stuff. Forrest is on quite a lot on the ACA. Whenever he's here, I would absolutely call into him. He will probably lose his mind and want to talk about it for hours because he gets so excited by this kind of thing. So I absolutely suggest giving Forrest a call when he's on one of our shows.
Yeah. But it's a great question. And I love the idea. And so for me personally, I have a hard time believing that there wouldn't be some form of life beyond Earth. How could there not? Right. So the idea that, and I know some people were talking earlier on it with another caller about, well, where did life come from? I mean, there is an argument that a fairly significant amount of people make that life on Earth comes from other planets. Now, where does life itself come from? Well, that doesn't help with that, but some would argue that, right? I love the idea. I don't see it's implausible, but I also don't see evidence for it either. And so as we're seeking the truth that is wanted, those are questions that I think we need to deal with, grapple with, and think through. But I love that yourself as a layperson, self-professed layperson that you are, I love the curiosity. I love the curiosity and I love the conversation. So thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Dan.
Well, I appreciate the directions for further questioning, and maybe I'll call back when Forrest is on and blow his brain with this idea.
I'm going to want to watch that call because I could just, all I can imagine is Forrest just losing his mind and being so excited.
I am curious, Dan, just out of curiosity, is this a topic, a line of questioning and thought, whatnot, that you are kind of more or less convinced of? Like, do you believe that octopi originate from another planet or another part of the universe? Or is this sort of just a fun thought experiment that you stumbled upon and wanted to toss it out for a little playful banter? How convinced are you of it?
I think that there's more to it than just simple playful banter.
Sure.
I think that from what I've looked into the life cycle of the octopus and some of the things it does naturally, it's just incredibly unique, like alien unique in my limited view. So maybe it did come from somewhere else. Maybe it's in the ocean. We know so little about what's under the surface of the ocean that something could easily just land there and be next to everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely a question that I would like to hear more answers to. I'm not in any position to answer anymore on it, unfortunately, Dan.
Well, like I said, I just wanted to bring it to you folks, and I've got another direction to bounce off questions and other hosts harangue. So thank you so much. And,
absolutely.
I'll let you guys get back to it.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
You have a good one. Phew, that was a show. We covered a lot of ground on that.
We did.
I'm so sorry it went on so long, but it was fun. It was. I feel like they're usually a lot shorter. Time. Me too. I would do it another 4 hours. But we do have other things to do. We've got families and stuff. Drew, yes. Thank you for joining today. We appreciate you being here. It was good fun. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it seems like everybody's heading to like Blue Sky and some of these other spots. I don't know if I'm lazy. I don't know if I just don't care about social media enough, but really I'm still kind of hanging out on Facebook. I say kind of because I haven't been real involved in social media for a number of years here. But Facebook and Instagram are the two easiest places to connect with me. I do have my website, drewbekius.com, which is just spelling my name out as it's written, all one word, .com. So you can connect me on there. I'm not super organized. I apologize. I'm a little bit of a lazy shit. Okay.
Just shout out into the ether and Drew might appear. Say his name 3 times in a mirror. There you go. That's how you find Drew.
There we go.
Again, we just want to thank Kelly for backing up. I don't know if he appears, he might wave because we don't know if his microphone works.
I think I got it fixed.
He got it fixed.
Cool.
There you are.
It was my fault.
Of course it was.
You know what? I moved my my audio interface a little bit because it was right on the edge of my desk, and I was worried it was going to fall off. And when I moved it, I accidentally turned one of the buttons off and didn't even realize it. So that was my fault.
Kelly, well, we found the truth on that.
There you go. Kelly, are we're going to do an after show in the Discord, right?
We are. We are.
You can come and join us there if you want. It's tiny.cc/ACD Discord if you want to join us there. I'm just going to also just remind you that there's the We Want the Truth segment. What says I'm an asshole without saying I'm an asshole? And now I'll say it the right way. What says I'm an asshole without saying I'm an asshole? Leave a comment on the video and perhaps someone will read it out next week if it's in our top 3. I know I'm not going to give the crew any chance, but I just want to say a big thank you again to the crew. You don't have to bring your crew cam up if you don't want to, but we love you and we appreciate you. Thank you for all your hard work. And we're going to sign off and we will see you next week with more Truth Wanted.
Thanks, everyone.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.